You heard the latest from David, who is outside of the courthouse. Based on what we know, the backstory that David outlined, what is your expectation for the sentencing in this case?
It's hard to say, because I think the challenge here is Mr. Bankman-Fried is such a young man. He's only 32 years old. And when you look at the other comparable types of cases, including Elizabeth Holmes and Bernie Madoff. Elizabeth Holmes, she's 40 now, and she was sentenced to 11 years. So that gives her the promise of a life outside of prison. Bernie Madoff was sentenced to, I think, 150 years, but he was 71 years old at the time and only served 10 of those years before he passed away. The thing I do note, though, is that Mr. Bankman-Fried is not helping himself. The court has already determined that the loss exceeds $550 million. There's this lack of remorse on Mr. Bankman-Fried's part. It doesn't help that the bankruptcy trustee and others were able to recover the assets. You can't argue that, well, I did tell you that your customer funds would be safe, and then I stole them, but then look, I invested them really well and made all of this money. That doesn't work under the law. The court is going to take into account his lack of remorse. The court has already taken into account its belief that he committed perjury and obstruction of justice in connection with this trial. So whatever the court does decide to sentence Mr. Bankman-Fried, it will not be, if the sentence is at all in Mr. Bankman-Fried's favor, it will not be because of Mr. Bankman-Fried.
You know, having gone through law school myself and covered in my career at Bloomberg other fraud and white-collar crime cases, there are guidelines, and then there is the human element of the judge. You mentioned Bernie Madoff, and the prosecutors in this case with Sam Bankman-Fried in a court filing pushed for 40 to 50 years because of the financial loss they argued was suffered by FTX customers and investors, and they quoted that figure was just below Madoff. Does the judge take that story, that historic story, into account when forming the sentencing?
The judge takes it all into account. The judge, I think, will take into account what the facts were with Mr. Madoff's fraud and how do they compare to Mr. Bankman-Fried's fraud. The challenge here, though, is, again, this lack of remorse on Mr. Bankman-Fried's part. He's, even at the hearing right now, just saying he made some bad decisions, which is equivalent to mistakes were made. He's not taking...
Well, Christine, that is on the final day of this story. Is it too little too late in that sense?
It's too little too late, and he's not even giving any today. It would be very different if he were to come and say, listen, I'm very sorry, I lied. I told my customers one thing and did another. I told my investors one thing and did another. But he's not even doing that on this very day. So we're not even able to analyze whether it's too little too late, because there's nothing today that he's offering that isn't remorse.
Christine, again, we're speaking with you because of the 11 years you did in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. You're an experienced former federal prosecutor. How much of this is about deterrence, sending a message that the sentence is put in place to dissuade others from any future actions similar to those that Sam Bankman-Fried carried out?
Deterrence is especially important in this case because of the newness of the cryptocurrency industry and the fact that it is only just now being regulated. There obviously are a lot of companies in this space, and there is an argument to be made that with the elimination of FTX and Binance, many of the other cryptocurrency exchanges in this space have learned their lesson and are operating on a much more on-board basis than these previous companies. So it's really important for the government to show novel industries, technologically complex industries, that they can bring charges and effectively prosecute these cases in trial by breaking it down into very simple facts that juries can understand, which is these companies said one thing and it turned out to be a lie, and they did it, and people were victimized and lost money as a result.
Christine, where will Sam Bankman-Fried's trial and this story rank in the history or mythology of U.S. white-collar crime and fraud cases?
I think it's going to be way up there. We still talk about Bernie Madoff, and that was decades ago. I think the Bankman-Fried case is going to be just like that.